Alright, hello everybody, and welcome back to another great video where I'm going to be discussing a movie that is significant because it's actually one of the few times in which I broke my golden rule of movie watching, which we'll discuss in just a second. First off, what are we discussing? I'm about to tell you about how I sat down to watch the latest film from Pixar Studios, Turning Red. And just a quick intro here. I've always loved pretty much everything Pixar has done up to this point. I grew up off those movies, you have to understand. I grew up watching movies like A Bug's Life, Cars, Toy Story. Very nostalgic to me in a lot of ways. And of course, over the years, I've always felt like Pixar was just a cut above every other animation studio. I've always admired them for their creativity, their originality, and their ingenuity in the way they tell stories. It's just great what they do. They do such a great job. Anyway, as I was saying, I sat down to watch Turning Red because here's the thing. When I saw the trailer, I wasn't that excited to see it at all. But I thought, you know what? This is Pixar. I'll just give it a try anyway, right? Maybe, hey, the trailer doesn't always tell the full story. Maybe I should just watch it anyway. I sat down to watch it. And I got to tell you guys, it was outstandingly bad. And so much so, it caused me to break my golden rule of movie watching. And what is that? My golden rule of movie watching is always finish the movie. And I apply the same thing with books or albums or whatever have. Always finish it. Because there may be that, it may start off terribly, but then in the middle, towards the end, it gets really, really good, or vice versa. It may get slow in one area and get really good later. That's my golden rule. Always finish it for that reason. You just never know what will happen. But Turning Red was so genuinely, outstandingly bad, I couldn't even finish it. I think I made it to about the 20, 25-minute mark, and I was just like, I've had it. That's it. What made it so bad, and why do I feel this way? Okay, and this is why we're talking about this. Turning Red has the premise of a girl named Mei Lin, I believe, a Chinese-American girl living in Chinatown with her family, and the idea is that she's struggling to grow up, right? She's about to become a teenager. We all know the changes that come with that. And just as she does, as she's trying to navigate this through her life and try to decide what her life is, she turns into a giant red panda. Look, it's a weird concept, but we expect this from Pixar, right? I expect this sort of thing. But yeah, she turns into a giant red panda, and now she has to face growing up as a giant red panda and dealing with all the issues that come with that. Okay. The storyline in and of itself isn't actually horrible. This I can actually see. I could see you guys, if you do it right, you could pull that sort of thing off. I understand that. But that's the premise of the story. My beef with the film came with its execution. And what have I always said on this channel? Listen to me. You can have a really good plot line, but just terrible execution. I've said this over and over and over. And frankly, let me just be frank here. Coming from Disney, I would have thought they'd learned their lesson from Eternals. They poured an outstanding amount of money into that film and had a great cast. And we all know what happened with Eternals. It was just bad all the way around. I would have thought they would have learned their lesson. But apparently from Turning Red, they didn't. The first thing that jumped out at me was the animation style was so different from every other Pixar film. Pixar has always looked phenomenal. Always. You guys do remember it was started up by Steve Jobs, who initially wanted to show the world how good computer animation films could really look. And they've always had this ethos throughout all their movies. They all looked really, really good. Eye-popping in some ways. I mean, even recently, you guys remember Toy Story 4 won an Academy Award for Best Visual. And no wonder. I could just pause some of the scenes in that film and say, wow, that looks great. And again, all through the years of their, almost 30 years of being in business, that's what they've always looked like. But then in about a couple years ago, they came out with a movie called Luca. Some of you remember that because I actually enjoyed that movie. But Luca had a claymation style. Okay, I understand that. Animation studios, they do this from time to time. They change up the style just to keep things fresh and interesting. And actually for the movie Luca, it actually kind of worked. It was good. I enjoyed it. But here, it was so hard to escape the, how do I put it, toddlerness of it all. I mean it. This looked like a genuinely poorly developed claymation film, and it just looked so awkward and so wonky. I gotta tell you, visually, it was hard to take seriously. Really, really hard to take seriously. And number two, like I said, the storyline's premise wasn't bad. It was actually something I could see as working. The problem I had is that as I tried to sit through the film and I attempted to guys, I mean it, I really did try to finish it. The issue is whoever wrote it, it was like they had ADD or something. And I mean this very kindly, because the story, look, my favorite film ever made was The Avengers Endgame. And here's why. It's a pretty lengthy film, but you know why it was lengthy? Because it gave them the time to give everybody their due. They took the time, it was almost 3 hours long, but they took the time to tell a really good story and bring it to conclusion. That's what made The Avengers Endgame such a great movie and why it's one of the biggest selling films ever. But apparently, with Turning Red, Disney seems to have forgotten this completely, or in this case, Pixar seems to have just not taken notice, because the story, the scenes moved around so quickly. I actually had trouble focusing on anything. I mean, it was the movie moved around so much it actually gave me ADD. I mean, that's how bad it was. It was constantly moving and shifting around to the point where, I gotta tell you, I actually had to read the description to make sure I understood what the story was, because you would never really understand it by watching the movie. It moved around so quickly. The scenes flickered around so rapidly. I'm serious. A scene in this movie was about 5 seconds, and that's the entire scene, and it's off to a new scene. I'm struggling to kind of understand why that was done. Artistically, it doesn't lend anything artistic to the film. You know, it doesn't, as I just told you, it doesn't add to the story in any way, because again, it's the endgame effect. I'm just going to coin that phrase, the endgame effect. You want to tell a really good story? You need to allow time to let that story develop. I compare it to coffee. If you want to make a really good cup of coffee, don't make it in your Keurig. Percolate it. It takes a little more time, but it makes a much better cup. And this is something Pixar just didn't seem to understand. So, for all the reasons that I just laid out, I never thought I would actually see the day where I would say this, but Pixar didn't just make a subpar film, they made a genuinely terrible film. And honestly, it kind of pains me to have to say that, because again, I'm very personally attached to the studio, to all the films that they do. So it kind of pains me to have to say that. But this is a genuinely bad film. I give it a 1 out of 10. Truthfully, I give it a 0 out of 10, but I can't do it because there's only a scale of 1 to 10. It's just that bad. And I mean it truthfully. I legitimately looked for reasons to praise this film. I racked my brain and really thought about it. I can't come up with anything at all. It was just poorly done, poorly developed, and poorly written. And I'm genuinely sad to say it. So, sorry guys. You did a really bad job. But I really hope you do a much better job next time. So, thank you for watching this video. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe.